الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ لا صاحبة ولا ولدا، والحمد لله الذي لم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا، والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه، ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله، بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة فكشف الله به الغمة، وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه الله اليقين، فاللهم اجزه عنا خير ما جزيت نبيا عن أمته ورسولا عن دعوته، وصل اللهم عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي حبيبنا ونبينا وقدوتنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. واعلموا إخوتي أن شر الأمور محدثاتها، وأن كل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. يقول الله في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: ومن الناس من يتخذ من دون الله أندادا يحبونهم كحب الله والذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله والذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله ولو يرى الذين ظلموا إذ يرون العذاب أن القوة لله جميعا وأن الله شديد العذاب. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah in verse 165, He describes and He mentions humanity, and He describes two groups of humanity. He says that from mankind are those who take others as equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they love them as they should love Allah. But the true believers, now He's describing the other group, but the true believers are extremely loving to Allah. That the true believers are increasingly loving to Allah, that the true believers are deeply devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah says, if only the wrongdoers could see the horrible punishment awaiting them, they would certainly realize that all power belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah is indeed severe in punishment. My dear brothers and sisters, in the world that we live in today, in these challenging times, it feels like everything around us is pulling us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the constant buzz of social media, the constant scrolling, the apps that now we are constantly using. 100 years ago, people were living in a totally different life, different world. No distractions. But now we live in a time where these apps and this technology is created, that there's research. They sat down and they figured out, how can we make these apps, how can we make this technology addictive? That they use the same technology that is used for slot machines, where every time you see someone liking, all of a sudden you get this dopamine. You get this rush. And so now you want to constantly be on it. So we live in a time where we're being bombarded by social media. We are being bombarded by the allure of material wealth, that you should have a Bugatti and you should have a huge mansion, otherwise your life sucks. That if you don't have it all, it's all or nothing. That the endless pursuit of entertainment. There was a time, even when I was growing up, that if you wanted to be entertained, if you wanted to watch a movie, you had to wait for a specific hour in order to be able to watch that movie. Or you had to go to a movie theater in order to watch that movie. Or you had to go and rent a movie from Blockbuster and watch that movie. But now you have these Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and so many different apps where now you could not only watch a movie, but you could watch a whole series. They call it binge watching. Where now, instead of watching a movie for 2 hours, now you could spend 8 to 9 hours watching a series over and over and over, and it's just a constant pursuit. What we don't understand, brothers and sisters, and what we don't realize is that all of this was created for one reason: to put us in a state of ghafla, in a state of heedlessness, to slowly but surely drag us away from that which is not only good for us, but is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we find ourselves entrapped in this cycle of pursuing all of this different types of technology, not realizing that as we are indulging in it, what is happening is that small dots, that no matter what, you cannot escape the sins that are in these technologies. And so as we are indulging in it, as we are engaging in it, small dots slowly but surely are starting to infest our heart, covering our heart, until, wal-'iyadu billah, the heart could become completely dark. And what we need to realize is that this is a plot not by who you see, not by those corporate leaders, or this agenda goes beyond that. That this agenda started before humanity came down to earth. This agenda started with who? With Iblis. قال فبعزتك لأغوينهم أجمعين قال فبعزتك لأغوينهم أجمعين إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين. That Iblis, Shaitan, when he was asked to bow down to Adam, our father, in the heavens, in paradise, when he refused and he was kicked from paradise, what did he say? قال فبعزتك لأغوينهم أجمعين. He said, oh Allah, by your majesty, that I will misguide them all. That all of them will be misguided except إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين, except those who are righteous from your slaves. إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين, except those slaves that you love, Ya Allah. إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين, except those slaves who are holding tight to the rope of you, Ya Allah. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, we are getting closer and closer to Ramadan. And if we could sit and reflect and remember when we were leaving the last Ramadan, our iman was strong, our faith was strong, our connection with the Quran was strong, our salat had more khushu' in it, our eyes, we were able to lower it. But as the time passed by and as we moved away from Ramadan, and as the weeks and the month and the dots and the scrolling and watching and the saying and the speaking and all of these sins started to accumulate, now we are at our weakest. The question is, how can we gain the love of Allah? How can we be from those who Allah says, إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ, except those slaves that are sincere to you, Ya Allah? How can we be from amongst those وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ? How can we be from those who are sincerely devoted to Allah? Today, my dear brothers and sisters, I will speak about 5 things that we could do in order to prepare for Ramadan. That we shouldn't wait till the day before Ramadan in order to prepare for Ramadan. We should start now. And the first thing that we should start doing, brothers and sisters, is we should start reading the Book of Allah. We should start contemplating the Book of Allah. We should start understanding the meaning of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in His book. قراءة القرآن بالتدبر والتفهم لمعاني. Whoever, brothers and sisters, wallahi, whoever wishes to have a communication with Allah, wishes to speak to Allah and have Allah reply to him, Allah speak back to him, he should build a relationship with the Book of Allah. يا منزل الآيات والقرآن بيني وبينك حرمة القرآن اشرح به صدري لمعرفة الهدى وعصم به قلبي من الشيطان. As you sit, brothers and sisters, as you start to build that relationship with the Book of Allah, as you sit and you start to reflect and attempt to understand why is this ayah coming after this ayah? Why did Allah put this surah before this surah or after this surah? What is the meaning of this word? Let me go and search and figure out what does Allah mean by this word. Let me hear some of the different tafasir and try to understand how can I implement these ayat in my life. Wallahi, when you start to have that kind of relationship with the Book of Allah, when you start to try to reflect on the Book of Allah, try to understand the Book of Allah, the first thing that you will feel is that you will feel this calmness, this tranquility in your heart. That the anxieties of this hayat dunya, we're all stressing, brothers and sisters. I don't care who you are. If you have a lot of money, you're stressed because you don't want to lose it. And if you have no money, you're stressed because you can't pay the bills. If you have a lot of kids, you're stressed because some of them are giving you a hard time. If you have no kids, you're stressed because, Ya Allah, give me some kids. That we all are being tested. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. This life is hustle and bustle and struggle that we are going through. How do I manage it? الذين آمنوا, those who believe, وتطمئن, their hearts find tranquility with the remembrance of Allah. This is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is Allah giving you the medicine of how to navigate this hayatul dunya, this life of ours. You see, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, his brothers and sisters, said that if our hearts truly became pure, we would never get bored from the words of Allah. That you find people listening to some songs and listen to it over and over, but eventually you get, those who listen to music, eventually you get tired of it. When it comes to the Book of Allah, you could take one ayah, and wallahi, every time you recite it, every time you read it, it gets sweeter and sweeter. Every time you try to understand it, it gets sweeter and sweeter. Every time you try to memorize it, it gets sweeter and sweeter. This is the miracle of the Book of Allah. And brothers and sisters, wallahi, this is something that is going to happen, but it will not happen overnight. That we have to put effort. That don't expect yourself to just be able to sit and read the whole Quran to make a khatm. That everything in life, why did the message of Islam come in 23 years? Because Allah knows that we are creatures of habit. We have to build everything slowly. So start slow. Take a few ayat. You know, we have these apps now. I use one called iQuran. I'm not even affiliated to it. I'm just giving you something that you could work with. That you could take it and you could choose. I want to recite from verse 4 to verse 7. And now put it on loop. So now it's going to just be repeating over and over. And imagine you living with it. Hearing it 30, 40 times until you start to memorize it. And now when you pray, you stand in front of Allah and you start reciting those same ayat. Imagine how much your khushu' is going to be different. Imagine how much your connection with Allah is going to be different. But we gotta make the effort, brothers and sisters. Let me give you one more example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He 17 times a day we have to recite what? Minimum, Surah Al-Fatiha. Why? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to you, Ya Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Not just this world, all the worlds. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. The one is merciful. Ya Allah, I am standing in front of you, Ya Allah. I praise you, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, thank you, Ya Allah. Thank you for allowing me to have everything that I need, even though I am sinful to you, Ya Allah. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Ya Allah, you are merciful to me, even though I do so much wrong, even though I'm always doing wrong, Ya Allah. Even though I'm always having shortcomings. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Ya Allah, I know that one day I will stand in front of you. Ya Allah, you are the King of the Day of Judgment. Ya Allah, one day I will have to stand, and everything that I have done in this life, you will judge me. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Allah, I'm standing in front of you, Ya Allah. And Ya Allah, I need your assistance, Ya Allah. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ya Allah, if it's not for you, Ya Allah, I know that I cannot succeed, Ya Allah. I cannot be guided, Ya Allah. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path, Ya Allah. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. Which path? The path of the righteous, the path of the prophets, the path of those who have done good, the Sahaba, those who have gained your favor. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Not the path of those who gained your anger, nor the ones who are led astray, those who are blinded and not knowing that they are on the wrong path. 17 times a day, brothers and sisters. Are we reading it and understanding what we're reading? Are we understanding the dua that we are making constantly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is number one. Learning to contemplate the words of Allah. Opening this book, what is Allah going to tell me next? What kind of conversation am I going to have with Allah now? Be excited when you open the book of Allah. Number two, becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers and sisters, through nawafil, through those extra prayers. But before that, I wanted to mention there was, and I'd like to mention this, there's this da'iyah. He's not even a sheikh. I'm not a sheikh either, to be honest with you. But he's just a da'i. His name is Ahmed. And he said a quote that's very profound. He said that if you want to call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has a number. That Allah has a number. And that number is 2, 4, 4, 3, 4. 2 rak'ahs of Fajr. 4 rak'ahs of Dhuhr. 4 rak'ahs of Asr. 3 rak'ahs of Maghrib. And 4 rak'ahs of Isha. That this, what is Sila? What is Salah? Salah is a connection. It is a connection, it's a direct line with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That between Fajr and Dhuhr, that I have done some wrong, that I have spoke about someone, that I have done something, now I go and I call Allah upon Allah, Ya Allah forgive me. That now you have this direct connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That 5 times a day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a chance in order to what? In order to enter Jannah. In order to cleanse yourself here before you enter your grave. 5 times a day. This is Salah. Now what is the nawafil? What is the benefit of the nawafil? You see, brothers and sisters, this phone has a signal, right? If I want to make a call, but that signal, depending on where I'm at, if I'm at a mountain, that signal is really low. If I'm close to a tower, that signal gets higher. See that signal between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? To strengthen that signal, it is through those extra prayers. Imagine you are stressed, you are coming from work, or it's time for Dhuhr, and you just had lunch and now you're ready to come and you want to pray, and now Allahu Akbar. All you're doing is thinking about work. But imagine if you take your time, you come a little bit early to the masjid if you're going to pray at the masjid, You go, you have your lunch, you leave sometime, you go and now as you're making wudu, Ya Allah, cleanse my hands from any wrong that I've done, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, cleanse my mouth from any words that I've said that is wrong, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, cleanse my face from anything that I've seen that is wrong, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, cleanse my mind from any thoughts that were evil, Ya Allah. And now you're standing in front of Allah, and now you're praying 2 rak'ahs before you pray Dhuhr. And you're taking your time, and you're contemplating. Imagine how sweet your Dhuhr will be. No matter how strong your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be. Even if you're going to work out, you have to warm up. You have to stretch. If you're going to play soccer, you're going to make sure that, otherwise you're going to get a strained muscle. Everything you do in life, you prepare for. How come we are not preparing for our connection with Allah, our meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So number 2, brothers and sisters, is nawafil. Taking the time in order to work and prepare ourselves. You see, Allah says, وَمَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبُّهُ. That my slave, that he keeps on coming closer and closer to me through performing nawafil, performing those extra prayers, that I start to love him. And brothers and sisters, wallahi, it's not much. It takes only a few minutes. If you just count, and now we have on these apps, you could tell how much you've been on YouTube, how much you've been on TikTok, how much you could be on what's you know. You could go and you actually calculate. If you take a little bit of each of them and spending on the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm speaking to myself, wallahi, before I speak to any of you. I am speaking to myself before I speak to any of you. Because I myself have shortcomings. But if we could take the time in order to just take a little bit from the time that we are having heedlessness and put it on our relationship with Allah, wallahi, everything in life becomes easy. So number 2 is doing nawafil. Number 3, brothers and sisters, remembering Allah constantly and in every situation. دَوَامُ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ عَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ بِاللِّسَانِ وَالْقَلْبِ وَالْعَمَلِ. What does that mean? That means that as I'm driving and I'm stuck in traffic, instead of listening to the news that's stressing me out more, لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. That you start making dhikr of Allah. أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه. That you constantly keep that tongue always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the benefit of it? You see, in our tradition, there was a story that was mentioned that Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he is one of the greatest scholars of his time. And at his time, there was no social media. People didn't know him to come and take selfies with him. And so Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal was traveling, and he ended up in this city, in this town, and he was late, so he wanted to go and rest in the masjid, the house of Allah. He's an imam, so this is where he finds connection anyway. There was no hotels. So he went to the masjid in order to rest. So as he was sitting and resting at the masjid, the security of the masjid came. He's like, "What are you doing here? The masjid is closed, man, you gotta go." He took him and he threw him outside. SubhanAllah, this is Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal. This is one of the greatest. He could have said, "What? You throw me out? Do you know who I am?" He got thrown out. Alhamdulillah, he went, he stood, he sat in front of the gate of the masjid. He was sitting there and he's exhausted. There was a baker right across the street of the masjid. That baker saw him, saw that there is a man there, and he told him, I know the rules and regulation of the masjid. Why don't you come? You could spend the night with me here. I'm working all night long. And so the baker, Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, came and he sat with the baker, and eventually he was sitting there and laying, and he noticed something. He noticed that this baker, as he's baking, subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar,
Subhanallah, as he's constantly in a state of dhikr. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. That he's constantly making dhikr. So, being a man of knowledge, he asked the man, Akhi, I see you making dhikr. Have you seen any kind of benefit from what you are doing? The man told him, Wallahi, I have never raised my hands and asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something except that He has fulfilled it for me. Except one thing. Except one thing that until now He has not accepted from me. So now Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he's actually like, what is it? What is it? Because he knows the benefit of dhikr. He said, Wallahi, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow me to see Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and until now I haven't seen him. The Imam told him, not only did Allah fulfill your request, but He brought to you Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal dragged outside from the masjid. That I am Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal. This is the benefit of dhikr, brothers and sisters. We all have issues in our life. We all have some kind of struggle. We all have some kind of trial and tribulation. Who are you relying on? If I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it seems like it's not getting accepted, maybe it's because my connection is weak. It could be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, is keeping it and for you to benefit from it in the next life. But maybe my connection with Allah is weak. My dear brothers and sisters, this is the incentive of us making dhikr. It's not just about, yes, we all want to enter Jannah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you what you need in this life. This is what the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entails. This is what it gives you. So, let us constantly make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are standing in the line waiting for groceries, astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Subhanallah. Friday, we make salah ala nabi. Adhkar al-sabah wal-misa. That all of these things, these were not just the sayings of our beloved prophets. No, there was a reason for them, brothers and sisters. That if we take them and we embody them, that our life will be at ease. Number 4 is إيثار محب الله على محب نفسك. That you hold yourself for the sake of Allah. What does that mean, brothers and sisters? You see, إِنَّ النَّظْرَةُ سَهْمٌ مِّن سِهَامِ إِبْلِيسِ مَسْمُومًا. That this eye, this sight of ours, it's like an arrow that Iblis is just waiting for you to see the wrong thing in order to be able to put that black dot in your heart. That we are living in a time where now you are seeing halal, you are seeing halal, you are seeing haram. You are seeing halal, you are seeing haram, you are seeing haram. You are seeing haram, you are seeing haram, you are seeing halal. That you are watching something about Palestine and now all of a sudden you are engaged with what's happening to our brothers and sisters, and then next thing you know you're seeing something haram. How can we make dua to our brothers and sisters and accept that justice will be made when we ourselves can't control ourselves? We have to work, brothers and sisters. We have to work on tightening this nafs. And wallahi, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. 100 years ago, they had no one. 100 years ago, our grandfathers did not have to go through what we have to go through. They would never see a naked woman outside. They would never hear profound music, disgusting things. But we live in a time where this is the reality. Not just here, but it's all over the place now. Even the Muslim countries, it's the same everywhere. The world has become a globe. That whatever you see here, you see everywhere. And sometimes it's worse somewhere else than it is here. So we need to, brothers and sisters, let us work on Ithar al-nafs. Ya Allah, I am holding myself, Ya Allah. I am trying to stay away from it, Ya Allah, for your sake. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. But I need your support, Ya Allah. I need your help, Ya Allah. that whatever we are weak in, let's ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in order to be able to manage it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أهله وصحبه ومن والاه. And forgive me, I know the time, so I'm just going to mention one last thing and then we're going to pray, inshallah. The last thing that I want to mention, brothers and sisters, is مطالعة القلب لأسماء الله ومعانيه. That we should start to reflect on the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the names of our Creator, the name of our maintainer. Like for example, Al-Latif, the name Al-Latif. What does that mean? The subtle one, the most gentle, the most kind. Imagine, brothers and sisters, that there are millions of tons of rain that come every year around the world. Imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides that all of that rain is going to rain in one spot. Imagine the devastation. Imagine how many homes will be drowned. Imagine how many lives will be taken. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the gentle one, the subtle one, He gives everything in due proportion. It rains here when it needs it. It rains here when it needs it. We saw what happened to our brothers and sisters in Pakistan. These are signs. These are signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what I could do to all of you. But the ones who died, may Allah Azza wa Jal accept them as shuhada. That if you die drowning, that you die as a shaheed. But it's a sign for all of us that Allah is being gentle. Imagine the name of Allah Al-Khaliq, the creator, the maker. That everything that we have in our body is working to the best of its ability. Your heart is beating. How many of you had to go and get a transmission, your transmission changed, or your engine changed, or your oil of your car changed? Allah has given you a heart that is beating for 7 years, constantly. How many of you bought a phone and after a few years the lens on it is scratched and now you can't take real nice pictures? Allah has given you eyes that work for 70 to 60 to 70 to maybe 90 years. If you need a kidney transplant, how much do you have to pay for it? How much do you have to wait in line in order to be able to get a kidney transplant? There are those who have so much money, but their heart is failing and they're looking for a transplant and they can't. They would spend all the billions that they have in order to get another heart. Your Lord has so many favors upon you. And what is He asking from you? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. What I'm asking from you is to worship Me, to be lights for humanity. Allah has chosen each and every one of you here, brothers and sisters, that He not only bestowed His favor upon you, that you have a body that's working, but you have been giving the gift of La ilaha illallah. You have been giving the gift of La ilaha illallah. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those who honor that gift. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those who constantly work towards pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dear brothers and sisters, Ramadan is coming. And it's time for us to really make the effort. Many people we know didn't make it to last Ramadan. We don't know if we're going to make it to this Ramadan. Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. اللهم اجعلنا من عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اجعلنا من عبادك المخلصين. اللهم اغفر لنا وعافنا واعف عنا وتوفنا مسلمين. اللهم اعن اخواننا في فلسطين. اللهم اعنهم يا عزيز يا كريم. اللهم انصرهم يا عزيز يا كريم. اللهم ثبت أقدامهم يا عزيز يا كريم. اللهم عن إخواننا في كل البلاد يا عزيز يا كريم. عباد الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر ذنوبكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تفعلون فقوموا إلى صلاتكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.